The stars looked different from the command deck of the Vrax exploration vessel. Science Officer Krell studied the readings with growing interest. The energy patterns from the small blue planet were unlike anything they had seen before. Fleet. Commander, I believe we have found something unusual, Krell said, their outer membrane shifting to a pale green of curiosity. Fleet Commander Zivdor floated across the bridge. The commander's body glowed with the deep purple of authority. Explain. The third planet shows signs of artificial structures and energy use. The patterns suggest intelligence, but the technology seems uneven. Some is quite primitive, while other signals show surprising advancement. Zivdor's glow intensified. This was their 18th first contact mission. Each previous species had quickly joined the Vrax collective, willingly or otherwise. Some offered resources, others labor. All eventually recognized the wisdom of submission. To Vrax guidance, prepare a small landing team. Standard protocol. The commander's words rippled through the communication field. Sub-Commander Pelnax will lead. Pelnax, who had been monitoring nearby, shifted color to acknowledge the order. Inside, they felt the gray of unease. Something about these readings felt wrong, but questioning Fleet Commander Zivdor would bring nothing but trouble. I will select a landing spot away from their largest gatherings, Pelnax said. A small settlement where we can observe without causing widespread panic. Good. Remember, 17 species before this one have joined our collective. This will be no different. Sheriff Alan Miller yawned as he drove slowly down Pine Ridge's Main Street. Night shifts in Wyoming were usually quiet. Most of the town's 3,000 people were asleep by 10. At nearly midnight, only the gas station and the bar were still open. His radio crackled. Sheriff, this is Betty at the station. We're getting calls about strange lights over by Miller's Creek. Alan sighed. Teenagers with flashlights again, probably. Or someone's drone. I'll check it out. He turned his truck toward the creek, about 2 miles outside town. As he drove, he noticed an odd glow in the sky that didn't look like the northern lights or anything else he recognized. His phone rang. It was Frank Butler, who ran the auto shop. Alan, you seeing this? I got my camera out. This ain't normal. I'm on my way now. Don't go near whatever it is. Not planning to. But this is bigger than a plane, Alan. And it's not making any noise. Alan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Call Joe Daniels. He might want to see this. Joe had served 20 years in the Army before retiring to Pine Ridge. If anyone would know what to do in a strange situation, it would be Joe. On the other side of town, Diane Ross was grading papers when her coffee cup started to shake. Then her kitchen table, then her whole house. She ran outside and gasped. A bright light, pulsing with strange colors, hung in the sky toward Miller's Creek. Her neighbor Sam came running out. You seeing this too? I already called Betty at the sheriff's station. I'm going to check it out, Diane said, grabbing her keys. Are you crazy? Sam looked at her like she'd lost her mind. I teach science, Sam. If something incredible is happening, I want to see it. The landing craft settled in a small clearing by the creek. Pelnax led the 5-member team through final preparations. Remember, this species has not achieved full space travel. They will be easily impressed by our technology. Deploy the neural compliance field as soon as we make visual contact. Pelnax's skin rippled with the orange of command. Historian Meslar will record the encounter for the archives. Meslar adjusted their recording equipment. This should be quick. None of their weapons can penetrate our field barriers. Do not underestimate new species, cautioned Medical Officer Trinpax. Each has surprised us in some way. The landing, ramp extended downward, touching the soil of Earth for the first time. Pelnax led the way, their tall, slender form glowing softly in the night air. The Vrax had no solid bones, their bodies supported by complex fluid systems contained within a semi-transparent membrane. They moved with a floating grace that made them appear almost ghostly. To human eyes, they looked like 6-foot-tall jellyfish that glowed with changing colors, walking on 4 tentacle-like limbs, while 2 more limbs functioned as arms. The sensors detected approaching vehicles. Prepare the compliance field. Pelnax ordered. Alan arrived first, parking his truck at the edge of the woods. Through the trees, he could see an object unlike anything he'd ever imagined. It looked like a giant teardrop made of metal, balanced on 3 legs glowing with soft light. Joe Daniels pulled up next in his battered pickup, followed by Frank Butler. More cars arrived. It seemed half the town had seen the lights and decided to investigate. "Everyone stay back," Alan called out, his hand resting on his gun. Joe came up beside him, carrying his hunting rifle. "What's the plan, Sheriff?" "Have no idea," Alan admitted. "I never trained for this." "None of us did," Joe said quietly. "But whatever comes out of that thing, we need to stay calm." Diane Ross pushed through the growing crowd, her eyes wide with wonder.
"This is first contact," she whispered. "Actual aliens." As if responding to her words, a ramp extended from the craft. The gathered humans fell silent. Then 5 glowing figures emerged. "My God," someone whispered. The creatures looked like walking
Jellyfish, their bodies changing colors as they moved. They had no faces that anyone could recognize. No eyes, no mouth. Just pulsing lights within their transparent forms. Alan stepped forward, hands raised to show he was peaceful. "Hello," he called out, feeling foolish but not knowing what else to say. The lead alien made a gesture. Suddenly, a wave of something, not quite sound, not quite feeling, washed over the humans. Alan's knees buckled. He felt dizzy, confused. Beside him, Joe Daniels grunted in pain but remained standing. What the hell was that? The aliens seemed to confer with each other, their colors changing rapidly. They appeared confused. Frank Butler raised his camera and took a picture. The flash seemed to startle the aliens. One of them made a quick motion and Frank's camera exploded in his hands. He yelled and dropped to the ground. That broke the tension. Several people ran back to their cars. Joe raised his rifle. "Don't," Alan shouted, but Joe fired a warning shot into the air. The aliens responded immediately. One raised what looked like a small stick. A beam of light shot out, hitting a tree near Joe. The tree didn't burn. It simply fell apart into dust. "Everybody, back," Alan yelled, drawing his gun. He didn't want to shoot, but he had to protect his people. More cars were arriving. Someone had brought a shotgun and fired it toward the aliens. The pellets hit some kind of invisible shield and bounced away. 2 of the aliens advanced, raising their weapons. Alan fired his gun, aiming at the ground in front of them as a warning. To his surprise, the bullet passed through whatever shield they had and struck one of the aliens in the lower body. The creature's glow turned a deep red, and it collapsed to the ground. The other aliens pulled back, dragging their injured companion. Their colors flashed wildly between them in what seemed like urgent communication. More gunshots rang out as panic spread through the crowd. Another alien was hit, its body turning dark blue. The 3 uninjured aliens retreated quickly to their craft, carrying their wounded. As the ramp began to close, the humans heard a strange echoing voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Unclassified resistance detected. Return immediately. Additional analysis required." The craft's glow intensified. Everyone backed away as it rose from the ground, hovering for a moment before shooting upward at impossible speed, vanishing into the night sky. In the sudden quiet, Alan looked around at the stunned faces of his neighbors and friends. "What just happened?" Diane asked, her voice shaking. Joe Daniels checked his rifle, his face grim. "I think we just met aliens, and I think they'll be back." Frank Butler looked at his burned hands where his camera had exploded. "They didn't expect us to fight back," he said. "Did you see how surprised they were?" Alan nodded slowly. "Whatever they tried to do to us, that wave thing, it didn't work like they thought it would." "So what do we do now?" someone asked. Alan took a deep breath. "Now we call everyone. The governor, the military, everyone. Because something tells me this was just the beginning." High above Earth, the Vrak ship rejoined the fleet. Fleet Commander Zivdor received the news with disbelief. No species had ever resisted the neural compliance field before. No species had ever wounded Vraks. On first contact, They must be studied further, the commander decided. This changes everything. Fleet Commander Zivdor's body pulsed with the dark red of anger. The command center of the Vrax vessel hummed with nervous energy as officers reviewed the data from the failed landing mission. Impossible, Zivdor said. Play the recordings, again. The central display showed the humans resisting the neural compliance field. It showed them attacking. It showed Vrax blood spilled on alien soil. Medical Officer Trin Pax report on the wounded. Trin Pax's form shifted to the formal blue of scientific report. Both will recover, Commander. The weapons used by the humans were primitive projectile launchers, but our fluid systems are not designed to resist physical penetration. Science Officer Krelta approached cautiously. Commander, our analysis shows something extraordinary. The neural compliance field had almost no effect on these creatures. Explain. Their brains are structured differently. They process information through both logic and something our translators call emotion. This dual processing seems to create natural resistance to our compliance technology. Zivdor absorbed this information, changing to the purple of deep thought. After 17 successful first contacts, the Vrax had grown confident in their methods. Too confident, perhaps. We must attempt diplomatic contact, the commander decided. Locate their central authority. The officers analyzed Earth's communication patterns and energy usage. They identified several major centers, but one stood out. This city appears to be a significant leadership hub, reported Navigation Officer Zelvon. They call it Washington, D.C. Prepare the diplomatic vessel, ordered Zivdor. Ambassador Trelnak will lead the mission. Ambassador Trelnak glowed with the green gold of determination. I will succeed where the landing party failed. In Washington, D.C., General Susan Green stared at the satellite images with growing alarm. The objects in Earth orbit weren't small like the one reported in Wyoming. These were massive. Madam President, we have confirmation, she said into her secure phone. Multiple unknown craft in orbit. One appears to be moving into position above the Capitol. President Henry Clark was already being moved to a secure location. What are our options? Limited, Madam President. Their technology is far beyond ours. We've mobilized all available forces, but if Wyoming is any indication, keep me updated, and get Dr. Watson to the command center. If they try to communicate, we'll need her. Dr. Louise Watson was the government's top linguist. She had been studying the recording from the Wyoming incident for the past 24 hours. Their language is unlike anything we've encountered, she explained as she was rushed into the Pentagon's newly established Alien Response Center. But there are patterns. And that final message, unclassified resistance detected, was clearly in English. You mean they can learn our language that quickly? General Green asked. It appears so. They must have remarkable translation technology. The center's alarms blared. A massive ship, at least a half-mile long, had positioned itself directly over the National Mall. All defensive systems ready, reported Air Force Colonel Ben Miller. But I strongly recommend against any aggressive action. That thing could probably wipe out the entire eastern seaboard. Agreed, said General Green. Hold positions but do not engage unless fired upon. A voice crackled over every communication device in the room. Attention Earth leadership. We request peaceful dialogue. Please respond. Ambassador Trelnak waited as the human signals buzzed with activity. The translation systems were working better now, after analyzing thousands of human broadcasts. They're afraid, noted Communication Officer Vrilpax. Their military forces are surrounding us. This is normal for first contact, Trelnak replied, especially after the unfortunate incident in the small settlement. A human voice finally responded. This is Dr. Louise Watson, representing the United States government. We are prepared for dialogue. Excellent, said Trelnak. We request visual communication and a meeting with your planetary leaders. There was a pause. We can establish visual communication, but Earth has many nations and leaders. I am authorized to speak on behalf of a coalition of governments. This confused Trelnak. A divided planet? How inefficient. We accept these terms. The main screen activated. showing a human female with dark skin and short hair wearing formal clothing. "I am Ambassador Trelnak of the Vrax Collective. We come with an offer for your species." Dr. Watson kept her expression neutral. "We are listening, Ambassador." The Vrax Collective spans 17 star systems. We offer protection and guidance in exchange for resource access and integration into the collective. This is a standard arrangement that has benefited many species. Watson's eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly do you mean by resource access and integration?" Trelnak's color shifted to a reassuring green. "We would establish mining operations on uninhabited parts of your world and outer planets. Integration means your species would adapt to our social and technological systems, which are proven to be efficient." "I see," Watson said carefully. "And if we decline this offer?" The question surprised Trelnak. None of the previous species had declined. "That would be unfortunate. The galaxy is dangerous. Unprotected species rarely survive." On the human side of the communication, General Green whispered to Watson, "That sounds like a threat." Watson nodded slightly. "Ambassador, humanity values its independence. We would need to discuss any arrangement thoroughly with all Earth nations. This will take time." "Time is acceptable," Trelnak replied. "We will remain in orbit while you consult." As the communication ended, Communication Officer Vrilpax turned to Trelnak. "They seem suspicious of our intentions. They are primitive and do not yet understand the benefits of the collective," Trelnak said. "Begin scanning their military capabilities more thoroughly." Aboard the USS Liberty, a naval destroyer stationed in the Atlantic, Captain Steve Rogers watched the alien vessel with growing concern. "Sir," called out his radar officer, "the alien ship is scanning us. Energy readings are spiking." "Are they targeting us?" Rogers asked. "I can't tell, sir. Nothing in our systems can interpret their technology properly." Rogers made a split-second decision. "Fire a warning shot. Not at them, just across their bow. Let's see how they react." The destroyer launched a missile that detonated a safe distance from the alien vessel. It was meant as a universal signal. "Back off." The alien ship went silent for 3 seconds. Then it responded. A beam of light thin as a pencil shot from the vessel. It touched the water exactly 100 yards from the destroyer. The sea didn't splash or explode. It simply vaporized, creating a perfect hole 50 feet deep that immediately began refilling with water. "My God," whispered Rogers. In the Vrax diplomatic vessel, Ambassador Trelnak was furious, glowing bright red. "They attacked during peaceful negotiations," the ambassador shouted. "This violates all diplomatic protocols." "It appears to have been a limited strike," said Defense Officer Mindak. "Our response was measured." "Recall all personnel," Trelnak ordered. "This mission is a failure." As the diplomatic vessel rejoined the main fleet, Trelnak reported to Fleet Commander Ziv Dor. "These humans are unlike any species we have encountered," the ambassador said. "They resist neural compliance. They are divided yet powerful. They attack during negotiations, and worst of all, they show no fear despite their technological inferiority." Zivdor's color darkened. "Your recommendation?" "Species exhibits extreme aggression during peaceful negotiation. Cultural integration impossible. Recommend immediate quarantine or neutralization." Zivdor considered this. Full neutralization would destroy potentially valuable resources, but the humans' resistance was troubling. "We will begin limited strikes on their military installations," the commander decided. "Perhaps when they see our full power, they will reconsider their position." Little did the Vrax know, across Earth, humans were already preparing. In bunkers and bases, in laboratories and workshops, they were studying the footage from Wyoming and Washington. They were learning. They were adapting. They were getting ready to fight back. 3 months had passed since the Vrax began their attacks. Major cities around the world lay in ruins. Military bases were destroyed. Governments operated from hidden locations. But still, humanity fought back. In the remains of Chicago, Greg Peterson huddled in the basement of an old library with his group of 20 survivors. Before the invasion, Greg had been a software engineer. Now he was a resistance leader. "The patrol is coming down Michigan Avenue again," whispered Mia, their lookout. "5 of them, same as yesterday." Greg nodded and checked his homemade device. It looked like a mess of wires connected to a small dish and a laptop. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have believed he could build such a thing. But necessity and desperation had made him learn fast. "Everyone quiet," he ordered. "Let's see if this works." He pressed a button on the laptop. The screen showed strange symbols, Vrax language that they had begun to decode. Greg had discovered that the aliens used a specific frequency for short-range communication. His device could detect it, and now, he hoped, interfere with it. Outside, 5 Vrax soldiers floated down the street. Their bodies glowed with the green of routine patrol. Suddenly, their colors shifted to confused yellow. They stopped, their tentacle-like limbs waving in agitation. "It's working," Greg whispered with excitement. "Their comms are jammed." One of the Vrax raised a weapon and fired wildly, hitting nothing. The others began to retreat, their coordinated movements now chaotic and uncertain. "They rely too much on constant communication," Greg said. "Without it, they get confused. Mark the time and location. We'll set up an ambush for tomorrow's patrol." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker that once belonged to NORAD, Dr. Carol Martinez studied a captured piece of Vrax technology. The device was about the size of a soda can, with a pulsing blue light at its center. "Any progress?" asked Colonel John Riley, the military officer in charge of the facility. Carol nodded, not looking up from her work. "This is part of their neural compliance system. We've learned why it doesn't work on humans." "And why is that?" "It's designed to target logical processing centers in the brain. Most species they've encountered must make decisions primarily through logic. But humans use a mix of logic and emotion, sometimes mostly emotion." She finally looked up, a small smile on her face. "Our messy, emotional brains saved us." Colonel Riley laughed softly. "First time being irrational has been an advantage." "Not just that," Carol continued. "We've figured out how to reverse engineer parts of their technology. The way they manipulate energy is amazing. If we can adapt it, we might be able to disrupt their shields." The colonel's expression grew serious. "How soon?" "Give me 2 more weeks." In the countryside outside London, Simon Kelly drove his delivery van along empty roads. Before the invasion, he had delivered packages. Now he delivered information. The Vrax had destroyed most satellite communications and internet infrastructure. But humans had returned to older methods. Simon was part of a network of couriers who carried news, technical information, and hope between survivor communities. He pulled up to an abandoned gas station where 3 people waited. "News from the European resistance," he said, handing over a small flash drive. "And something else, the French scientists discovered a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" asked one of the waiting men. "The Vrax can't see well in ultraviolet light. And they hate certain sound frequencies. It disrupts their fluid systems. The information would spread across Britain by nightfall, then to other countries through people like Simon. Humanity was sharing knowledge faster than the Vrax could counter it." Supreme Strategist Vel'Koz reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. The human resistance should have collapsed by now. Instead, it was becoming more effective each day. "Explain this," Vel'Koz demanded, addressing the War Council. The strategist's body pulsed with angry red patterns. Junior observer Niltex approached, glowing with the cautious blue of a bearer of bad news. "Honored strategist, humans do not respond to pressure as other species do. When we destroy their military bases, they form smaller independent fighting groups. When we cut off their communications, they create new methods to share information. Most troubling," added Security Chief Zornak, "they are beginning to understand our technology. 3 of our patrol units were ambushed yesterday using tactics that suggest knowledge of our sensory limitations." Vel'Koz shifted to a darker shade. "This defies all our models. The more we attack, the more creative they become." "There is worse news," Niltex said. "We have lost contact with Scout Ship 12 in the region they call North America. We believe humans may have captured it intact." Silence fell over the War Council. An intact ship meant humans could study working Vrax technology, not just damaged pieces. This changes our assessment, Vel'Koz finally said. These humans are not merely troublesome. They represent a potential existential threat to the collective. I recommend immediate full withdrawal. Former Navy SEAL Rick Harrison couldn't believe what his team had accomplished. They had captured a Vrax scout ship. The small vessel sat in the hangar of an abandoned aircraft factory in Nevada, surrounded by excited scientists and engineers. Nobody touch anything yet, Rick ordered. These controls could be booby-trapped. Dr. Olivia Barnes approached the ship cautiously. The designs are fascinating. No sharp angles anywhere. Everything curves. It must have something to do with their fluid physiology. Rick nodded. Focus on the propulsion and weapons first. We need to understand how they move so fast and how their shields work. A young engineer named Jack was already taking photographs of every inch of the ship. The materials are unlike anything I've seen. Some of this isn't even solid. It's like a gel that holds its shape. How did you guys manage to capture it? Olivia asked Rick. We got lucky. We were testing those sound-based weapons the European resistance told us about, the ones that disrupt their fluid systems. Hit this. Patrol at the right frequency and their ship crashed almost intact. 2 of my men didn't make it, but... He patted the hull of the alien craft. This will make their sacrifice worth it. Olivia studied the ship's entrance. I think I can figure out how to power it up safely. Give me a day. Rick smiled for the first time in months. One day with this ship might change everything. Aboard the Vrax flagship, Fleet Admiral Jorvex received the recommendation from the War Council with disbelief. Withdraw? From a pre-spaceflight species? This is unprecedented. Supreme Strategist Vel'Koz's transmission glowed with urgent colors. This species learns at an exponential rate. They adapt our own technology and improve upon it. Our models predict that within 1 Earth year, they will have developed countermeasures to most of our weapons. Impossible, said the Admiral. Observer Niltex has compiled evidence. Across their planet, humans are sharing information without centralized control. Each defeat makes them stronger. Each captured piece of our technology accelerates their development. Admiral Jorvex shifted to the purple of deep thought. The Vrax had begun this conflict expecting an easy victory. Now they faced something unprecedented in their expansion history, a species that became more dangerous the harder they were pressed. I will consider the recommendation, the Admiral said finally, but withdrawal would require approval from the High Command. They will question why we failed where 17 previous expansions succeeded. Because, Vel'Koz replied, we have never before encountered a species like humans. As the transmission ended, Admiral Jorvex gazed at the blue planet on the view screen. Such a small world to cause so much trouble. Perhaps the War Council was correct. Perhaps the wisest course was retreat. But the Vrax had one final option, the planet-wide sterilization protocol. It had never been used before, but it would end the human threat permanently. The Admiral would need to decide soon, before the humans grew even more dangerous. Across Earth, in basements and bunkers, in hidden labs and makeshift workshops, humans continued to prepare. They studied Vrax technology. They shared discoveries. They planned their counterattack. They had no intention of merely surviving. They intended to win. 6 months into the war, Dr. Carol Martinez stood before a group of military leaders in the Rocky Mountain bunker. On the table in front of her sat a small device about the size of a cell phone. This is it, she said. The shield disruptor. It creates a specific electromagnetic pulse that temporarily overloads Vrax shield technology. Colonel John Riley picked up the device, turning it over in his hands. It's so small. That's the beauty of it, Carol explained. We've simplified the design so it can be mass-produced with materials we still have access to. The pulse only works for a few seconds and at close range. But that's enough time to get a shot through their shields. General William Parker, the highest-ranking military officer still alive, leaned forward. How many can we make? With factories in eastern Tennessee, we can produce thousands within 2 weeks. Paul Davis is already setting up the production lines. Paul Davis? The high school physics teacher? Asked a surprised officer. Carroll nodded. He's brilliant with practical applications. Before all this, he was building fusion reactors with his students for science fairs. General Parker stood up. Get the design to every resistance cell we can reach. Everyone needs to know how to build these. In a converted warehouse in eastern Tennessee, Paul Davis supervised dozens of workers assembling shield disruptors. The workers were an odd mix: former factory employees, teachers, students, and anyone else with nimble fingers and quick minds. Keep the connections tight, Paul reminded them as he walked the production line. If they're loose, the pulse won't. Be focused enough. A young woman named Amy approached him with a modified design. Mr. Davis, I think I found a way to extend the disruption time to 10 seconds instead of 3. Paul studied her diagram and smiled. This is excellent, Amy. Let's test it, and if it works, we'll update the design. This was happening all over. People improving on the original plans, making the technology better through countless small adjustments. Humanity's greatest strength was turning out to be its collective creativity. In California, Linda Wilson's team had achieved something remarkable. The former software developer had led a group that cracked the VRAX communication codes. We can listen to everything they say to each other, she told her team as they gathered around computer screens in their hidden base beneath a former shopping mall. And they have no idea. What are they saying? Asked Raj, a college student who had become one of their best code breakers. They're scared, Linda said with a hint of satisfaction. Their commanders are arguing about whether to retreat from Earth entirely. The team cheered, but Linda raised her hand for quiet. There's more. Some are pushing for something called a sterilization protocol. We think it's a planet-wide weapon. The room fell silent. How much time do we have? Raj asked. Their fleet admiral is still deciding, but we need to act fast. Get this information to all resistance groups immediately. Across the world, humanity prepared for a counterattack. The plan was not one massive strike, but thousands of small, coordinated actions. The VRAX command structure was centralized and rigid. They couldn't adapt quickly to multiple threats at once. In Chicago, Greg Peterson's group had built improved jamming devices that could disrupt VRAX communications over wider areas. In London, Simon Kelly's courier network had spread the shield disruptor plans across Europe, where resistance groups were building their own versions. And in Nevada, Rick Harrison and Dr. Olivia Barnes had made the biggest breakthrough of all. They had learned to fly the captured VRAX scout ship. The controls are actually intuitive once you understand their thinking, Olivia explained as she guided the small alien craft through the night sky. They use a three-dimensional movement concept rather than our linear systems. Rick sat beside her, watching the alien landscape of lights and symbols on the control panel. How are the weapon systems coming along? We've figured out the basics. Their weapons are energy-based, much more efficient than ours. And now that we understand their shield technology too, Rick nodded. We're ready. Send the signal. Olivia activated the communication system they had installed in the ship. It sent a simple message to resistance groups worldwide. Operation Turning Point is go. In orbit around Earth, Fleet Admiral Jorvex was still considering the War Council's recommendation to withdraw. The latest reports were troubling. Increased human activity worldwide, more attacks on VRAX patrols, and strange energy signatures that suggested humans were testing new technologies. Admiral, called Sensor Officer Kelnar, we're detecting multiple small energy pulses around the planet. What kind of pulses? Asked the Admiral. Unknown, but they match no human weapons we've encountered before. They appear to be... The officer stopped mid-sentence, their color changing to alarm. Red. Admiral, our destroyer in Sector 4 reports shield failure. Before the Admiral could respond, more reports flooded in. VRAX ships across Earth orbit were experiencing temporary shield failures, and in those moments of vulnerability, they were being attacked. Impossible, whispered Jorvex. How could they develop such technology so quickly? An even more shocking report came next. Admiral, we've detected one of our own scout ships launching from the planet's surface. It's attacking our vessels. Air Force pilot Kate Rodriguez felt strange sitting at the controls of an alien ship. But she had trained for weeks in the simulator Olivia's team had built. Now she was flying the real thing, the second Vrax scout ship humans had captured. Target in range, reported her weapons officer Bill. Their shields are down. Kate lined up the shot. The Vrax destroyer was massive compared to their small scout ship, but with its shields disabled by the disruption pulse, it was vulnerable. She fired. The destroyer's engine section exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The massive ship began to drift powerless. "One down," Bill shouted. "Move into the next target." Similar scenes were playing out across Earth's orbit as more captured scout ships joined the fight. On the ground, resistance groups attacked Vrax ground forces at the exact moment their communication systems were jammed and their shields failed. It wasn't a fair fight. Humans were still using mostly captured or improvised weapons against vastly superior technology, but they had the element of surprise, and they had learned the Vrax weaknesses well. On the Vrax flagship, chaos reigned. Reports of attacks came from everywhere at once. The rigid command structure, designed for efficiency and normal operations, became a liability when faced with thousands of simultaneous, unpredictable actions. "Admiral," reported Defense Coordinator Vexelar, "we have lost contact with 23 vessels. Ground forces report widespread attacks. Our neural compliance fields are being jammed. Our shields are failing temporarily all over the planet. Fleet." Admiral Jorvex had never seen anything like this in centuries of military service. "Prepare the sterilization protocol," the Admiral ordered finally. "This species cannot be allowed to threaten the collective." "Admiral," interrupted Sensor Officer Kelnar, "we're detecting hundreds of small objects approaching our fleet. They appear to be missiles, but they're moving at velocities our systems can't track properly." On view screens throughout the flagship, the crew watched as swarms of missiles, human-made but incorporating Vrax propulsion technology, streaked toward the fleet. They moved in unpredictable patterns that Vrax targeting systems couldn't follow, and when the disruption pulses hit, shields failed at the worst possible moments. "Evasive action," ordered the Admiral, but it was too late. The missiles struck ships throughout the fleet, causing devastating damage. In that moment, Fleet Admiral Jorvex made the decision that would become infamous throughout the galaxy. The Admiral sent a transmission to all Vrax vessels. "Disengage immediately. Humans do not fight to conquer or subjugate. They fight to survive. And they learn faster than any species we have encountered. Our only option is retreat." As the Vrax fleet began to withdraw from Earth orbit, humanity celebrated its first victory. But it was only the beginning. With captured Vrax technology, humans now had the means to venture beyond their world. And they had learned an important lesson. They could stand against the stars. 1 year had passed since the Vrax retreated from Earth. The world was forever changed. Cities were being rebuilt. Technology had advanced decades in a single year. Most importantly, humanity was united in a way it had never been before. In Australia, the former Vrax command post had been converted into Earth's new space defense headquarters. Dr. Carol Martinez stood at a large window, looking out at the clear blue sky. Behind her, dozens of scientists and engineers worked at stations filled with a mix of human and adapted Vrax technology. "Dr. Martinez, we've completed the decryption," called out a young analyst named Eric. "We have full access to the Vrax navigational database." Carol walked over to his station. The screen showed star maps with routes and markers. "What have we learned? The Vrax control 17 star systems, but they're just one species in a much larger galactic community." Eric pointed to different areas on the map. "These markers indicate territories of other spacefaring civilizations, dozens of them." Carol took a deep breath. "So we're not alone, and we're not safe. The galaxy is full of potential friends. And enemies." "There's more," Eric said. "Based on the database, most of these civilizations are aware of each other. They have some form of diplomatic relations. The Vrax are known as aggressors who target less developed worlds. So we beat the bullies of the galaxy," Carol said with a small smile. "That's something, at least. In a facility outside, what remained? of Los Angeles, Greg Peterson supervised the final tests on Earth's first faster-than-light communication system. Based on adapted VRAX technology, it would allow humanity to send messages beyond the solar system. "Ready for the test, sir," said his assistant, Mia. Greg nodded. "Let's make history." The device hummed to life. Unlike the VRAX original, which was designed for their fluid biology, the human version used familiar interfaces, screens, keyboards, and voice controls. "Signal is stable," reported a technician. "We're ready to transmit." This was a moment Greg had dreamed about since he was a child reading science fiction. Humanity's first message to the stars. Of course, it would just be a test signal aimed at a nearby system, but still, it felt momentous. "Begin transmission," he ordered. The message, a simple mathematical sequence proving intelligence, shot out at speeds that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The room erupted in cheers as confirmation came that the signal had successfully left the solar system. "We did it," Mia said, squeezing Greg's arm in excitement. "We're officially an interstellar civilization now." In Washington, D.C., which was still being rebuilt after the war, the United Earth Council held its monthly meeting. Representatives from every nation sat around a large circular table. At the head was Chairperson Maya Nelson, formerly a diplomat who had shown remarkable leadership during the darkest days of the invasion. "The long-range sensors have detected multiple vessels approaching our solar system," she announced to the suddenly quiet room. "They aren't VRAX ships." General Susan Green, who had survived the war and now commanded Earth's United Defense Forces, stood up. "We've analyzed their approach patterns. They're being careful to appear non-threatening. Their designs are various. These ships come from different species. Are they hostile?" asked the representative from Japan. "Unknown," replied the general. "But they've made no aggressive moves. In fact, they're moving slowly, giving us plenty of time to detect them." "They want us to see them coming," said Chairperson Nelson. "This is a diplomatic approach." As if on cue, an aide entered and whispered to the chairperson. Nelson's eyes widened slightly. "We've received a transmission," she told the council. "It's in multiple languages, including several Earth languages. The message is, 'Greetings to the people of Earth. We represent the Galactic Concord, an alliance of peaceful civilizations. We request permission to send a diplomatic delegation to your world.'" The room buzzed with excited conversation. After a moment, Nelson raised her hand for silence. "We should prepare to receive them," she said. "This is the moment humanity takes its place among the stars." 2 months later, a single ship from the Galactic Concord landed in a specially prepared area outside the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in New York. Security was tight, but the event was broadcast worldwide. Billions watched as the ship's door opened and 12 different beings emerged. They were as diverse as could be imagined, some tall and slender, others short and broad. Some had multiple limbs, others moved by floating. Some had recognizable features like eyes and mouths, while others were utterly alien in form. The one who led them, a being named Zorilia, from a species called the Elshir, approached Chairperson Nelson. Zorilia looked somewhat like a tall, graceful tree with silvery bark and limbs that divided into dozens of delicate branches. Lights pulsed along these branches in complex patterns. A translator device floated beside Zorilia, converting the light patterns into speech. "Greetings, people of Earth. We come in peace, and with great respect." Nelson bowed slightly. "We welcome you to Earth. This is a historic day for humanity." "More historic than you may realize," replied Zorilia. "Never in recorded history has a pre-FTL species successfully repelled a full VRAX invasion force." At the reception that followed, representatives from Earth mingled with the alien diplomats. Dr. Carol Martinez found herself speaking with a junior diplomat, a being with 4 arms and iridescent skin that shifted colors like a VRAX, but was clearly of another species. "There's something I need to ask," Carol said quietly. "Why did you really come? Just to welcome us to the galactic community?" The diplomat's color shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The VRAX returned to their homeworld with warnings about humanity. These warnings have spread throughout the galaxy. Many species now regard humans with fear. Some advocate for preventive measures against your expansion. Carol felt a chill. Preventive measures? You mean attack us before we become too powerful? Some believe that would be prudent. The conquered does not share this view. We believe peaceful coexistence is possible with all intelligent species. What would you advise us to do? Asked Carol. The diplomat studied her before answering. The Vrak's first encounter with humans ended with one order: run. Perhaps it is time for the galaxy to learn there is another option: friendship. The diplomat's color shifted to something deeper, more intense. But should that fail? Its voice became quieter. Remember that the Vraks were right to run. Carol looked out at the gathering where humans and aliens attempted their first awkward conversations. She saw hope there, but also understood the diplomat's warning. Humanity had proven itself dangerous when threatened. It had shown the capacity to adapt, to learn, and to fight against impossible odds. Now they had a choice: to be feared throughout the galaxy or to become something better. To show the stars that the same creativity and determination that had driven the Vraks away could also build bridges across the vast gulfs between worlds. As the sun set on this historic day, Carol Martinez made a silent promise to herself and to the future of humanity. They would reach for the stars not with weapons, but with open hands. But if those hands were ever slapped away, well, the Vraks had learned that lesson already.